Joining us this morning in a CNBC exclusive with his outlook on the jobs number and the economy for the second half and beyond is Nassim Taleb. He's a principal of Universa Investments and author of the book that you may know by now, The Black Swan. It's good to see you. Welcome back. And happy 4th of July in advance. Just in advance of the 8:30 number on jobs, you say it'll be inconclusive. What do you mean by that?
Well, I have two things to say. The first one, before I was in the green room, I looked at the list, I looked at the forecast, I looked at the list of the people forecasting, what number we're going to get at 8:30. And this list did not have anyone who saw the crisis coming. So how can you trust the forecast? That's the first one. The second one, when you look at a number that almost doubled in a year, unemployment has doubled. I mean, plus is like 90%, but they computed just the error in computation. Would make it almost double. In a year, you cannot take any monthly number, right? Seriously. The number is very volatile. Right. So what you're observing is volatility more than anything else.
Sure.
Okay. So the difference between 200,000 and 600,000 is close to zero.
But we're also looking at trend, yes?
Even then, the trend, you don't be fooled by complex systems. You can have a positive number even, okay, without it mean anything. The system is very fragile. We're talking about something that's deleveraging. The system is very fragile. You may have what they call green shoots, whatever they want to call them. You may have a temporary relief, but you're still in a world that is breaking, okay, and that world should break, okay. We're going to break. It's going to go. And instead of the government, okay, what I mean breaking is you have a system that's very fragile, okay, and whatever is fragile, a complex system breaks. In other words, if you look at nature breaks anything that's too big, all right, not to create interdependencies, just so you reach equilibrium. So anything that's fragile eventually will crash, and the system is very fragile. It is crashing. We're in the middle of a crash. So if I'm going to forecast something, I know it's going to get worse, not better. And when things start breaking, as you can see they break much harder than than they build themselves. So we're going to go to an equilibrium. You're going to have much less leverage in the system and things like that. So the system is the leverage. Instead of the government, okay, making the transition, okay, making the smooth transition by lowering the level of debt, because really the monkey on our back is the debt. Okay, we have a huge amount of debt. Instead of the government doing that, now they're trying to look at stimulus plans and things that may inflate assets, and that may run out of control. So instead of deflating debt, they're thinking of inflating assets, and actually they don't even know what they're doing because they're doing a lot of contradictory things. So this is why what makes me very pessimistic is not to see any leadership or any awareness on the part of government of what needs to be done, which is to deleverage by, I don't know, somewhere between $40 and $70 trillion worldwide.
Right. Kevin, your thoughts?
Heavy stuff. I would say this, my question would be, how is hyperinflation? You guys are oriented towards another large event type, as you say, a negative event. Is hyperinflation a successful outcome of what they're trying to do, or is it an inevitable consequence of what they're doing?
No, our statement is the error. My specialty is human error, not monetary policy. When we look at monetary policy papers and looked at the studies in monetary policy, we just realized that these people don't know what's going on because they don't have control over their error rate. Okay, so so you can inject money and it may do nothing for a long time. And hyperinflation is a mechanism that's very vicious because all you need is for people to think there's going to be inflation and start hoarding. So it's a perceptual mechanism. Okay? And the tips won't save you from that. If you have tips pay you nominal inflation, whereas expectations can go wild. Okay. Right. So this is the with commodities and things that are not part of that computation of the tips. So this is why we're worried. My statement is not that we're going to have hyperinflation. My statement is that monetary policy is something that's out of control. Okay, we don't know. We have absolutely, because it's very nonlinear. We have no idea how to do it. Okay, and those who are basing themselves on past history don't know anything about history because we're in an environment that does not resemble the past at all. So what I'm saying is try to stay out of monetary policy to get out of this.
But isn't trying to predict human behavior the most difficult component in all of this? Even people who saw big problems coming, who
Yes.
saw some sort of a crash coming, could have been off by a factor of years on the timing on it, because you can't necessarily pin down.
I'm not predicting a crisis or something. I'm saying the system is fragile, okay? And something that's fragile is eventually going to break, and it's very unsound, okay? And even if you're off by a couple of years or 5 years or 10 years, all right? If I tell you this house is going to collapse, all right? Whether it collapses a minute after, okay, my prediction or my statement, or it collapses 10 years later, it's still something.
Why is it
needs to be
not? Why is it
prevented.
not possible to have an orderly deleveraging of the economy? Why does it have to end in collapse?
The government doesn't want to do it. The government can very easily go to banks and start immediately having conversion of debt to equity. If you convert debt to equity, this is the only. To me, it's the only solution.
You've made
if
this
I don't
point
see
before.
That, if you don't convert forcibly debt into equity, have banks call on house. People are getting. Hate mail from the banks every month, all right? You owe us 7,000 more, everything. Instead of, and the person getting that mail, of course, is going to have is going to be frozen. If the banks went to pay a visit to a homeowner, all right, with a smile and told him, listen, we're going to reduce your monthly payments to $1,000 from 7,000, but I'd like to own 70% of your house or 60% of your house, whatever you can settle. The person would start from scratch on a healthy basis. You don't want to wait for foreclosures, okay? That would be a process that would facilitate. You could generalize it. You could do it in every single economic activity that has a high amount of debt and convert it to equity. But they don't want to do it. They're afraid. They don't want to take it's like, it reminds me of someone falling from a bicycle. Okay, when someone falls from a bicycle, they're like shocked, and they don't want to be very aggressive. We need to be much more aggressive with what's going on.
We have turned debt into equity on banks, but you're talking about it on a much
bigger scale. We have so much debt in the system. Okay, it's not, and turning banks into equity. When Citibank goes to the $1 share, of course, that became equity. All right, you want to do it in a more systematic, more aggressive way.
And what do we do with the U.S. debt? Do we sell the U.S. to China?
The U.S. government debt is not the major part. The U.S. government debt is about 10 trillion.
The housing
10 trillion.
Market, compared to the housing market, how much is U.S.
No,
debt?
I thought you meant government.
Government debt.
Government debt is about, so far, okay, government, you also mean state debt is a small part. It's like 20%, maybe 10 to between 10 and 30%, depending what you call debt. But we have also liabilities that are not part of the government debt that we have to worry about.
Then let's talk about the liabilities that will eventually be debt. I mean, this dwarfs just what the problems in the housing industry, right? I mean, the system you're talking about is just the housing industry? If we could prevent all the foreclosures,
we have private equity, we have companies choking on debt, the debt is generalized here and in the Western world. Plus, you can't separate the U.S. from other countries in the same condition, like Ireland. We all depend on each other. It's a systematic process that needs to take place, converting debt into equity right away. That's the only solution. And if we take the devil by the horn, then we'll transit into a more stable environment in which you can forecast, make mistakes, and it will be harmless.
All right, Nassim, we want to thank you very much for your time
All right,
today.
thanks
We
a lot.
appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
in.